Welcome back to another episode of Live Life Being Adored. I'm your host, Kat Minks, owner and creative director of Adore Productions. And today we are diving into a conversation that I think is long overdue. The wedding industry has always been built on creativity, hospitality, relationships, and trust. Behind every beautiful celebration are countless hours of planning, problem solving, communication, and care, much of which couples never actually see. But over the last decade, our industry has changed dramatically. Social media has transformed the way couples dream about their celebrations and weddings. AI is changing how businesses market themselves and how clients gather information as well. And it has increased the cost of nearly every aspect of running a business. Yet many planners and designers are finding themselves facing greater expectations while being asked to do more for less. At the same time, we're seeing an incredible number of new professionals entering into the industry, and that's exciting. Every experienced planner was once new, but it also raises an important question about education, mentorship, sustainable pricing, and what truly it takes to deliver the level of service and quality couples deserve. Today's conversation isn't about gatekeeping. It's not about criticizing people who are just getting started. It's about having an honest discussion about the realities of this profession, the value of experience, and how we can continue to elevate the industry that plays such an important role in the most meaningful days of people's lives. Joining me today is Bree from Luna Soul Events. Bree brings her own experience and perspective to this conversation. And together, we are exploring everything from client expectations and the impact of inflation to AI, professionalism, pricing, and what the future of what the wedding industry might look like. Whether you're a couple planning your wedding, a fellow planner or creative entrepreneur, or simply curious about what really happens behind the scenes, I hope this conversation offers insight, encourages thoughtful discussion, and helps us all better understand the work that goes into creating unforgettable celebrations. So let's get into it. Live Life Being Adored, the art of celebrating everything there is in life, a podcast all about hosting, having, and attending amazing celebrations. Gathering matters, and you'll join me, award-winning event designer and publisher of Adore magazine, Kat Minks, as we delve into unique ways to have celebrations, why we have them, and the unique stories behind them, including places, people, themes, unique inspiration, meaningful events, and more. We touch on all kinds of celebrations and facets of them, from weddings, award shows, corporate gatherings, social events, kids' parties, birthdays, anniversaries, and the art of celebrating our gifts, purpose, and what we were created to do, which is gather. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Live Life Being Adored. And today I have an incredibly special guest to have a great conversation about the wedding industry and event planning industry as a whole. And I'm so excited to introduce you to her. Brianna Schwartz is a 12-year veteran of event planning and wedding planning. She's planned all over the country. And I want to just say thank you for joining us today, Brianna. And if you want to give a little bit of an introduction about your business and also how you got into the industry, that would be wonderful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor and pleasure. I'm Bree Schwartz, Brianna Schwartz, owner and lead planner at Lunasol Events. How did I get into the industry? It started really with planning a few friends' weddings. I had a group of friends, all of us, and I was one of the first to plan a wedding. And before that, had a cousin, and just kind of like dove in. And I was like, "Hey, let me help you with all the logistics." And realized just very quickly there was a gap that was just like, "Oh." Planning all the fun stuff, but there was like those small logistical things, and I just was like, let me take that on, got my spreadsheet. And so that was, well, 14 years ago. And then really just realized that I love creating experiences that bring people together. I planned my own wedding 10 years ago, September 24th. Shout out to that. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience for me, and realized that I wanted and needed that gap person. And I was like, I didn't really know much about wedding planning or, event planning as like a career. I was like, but there's gotta be somebody out there with this title. And so I looked into it and then started planning with a couple different companies, which was amazing. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, did planning there. That's a whole other set of skill sets in the event planning industry. So amazing, and various other places. So it really just brought it together. But I think it really goes back to as a side thing of like. I look back at my childhood, and I love desk accessories. Like I had all the pens, I had the notepads, I was always that girl who wanted to play school. And I remember I had a binder, and it was this like I think it was Lisa Frank actually, and it like the Trapper Keeper, and it had like all this stuff, and I was like doodling and like planning all these things and like playing school with my stuffies, and so I think it's always been in me, but helping with a couple different weddings and then my own wedding, it just really highlighted how much fun it was to yes, make something look pretty, but the passion that I had about the experience of planning such a large event, and that it can and gets to be fun. So that's really how I dove in, and then it just kind of grew from there. And then 3 years ago, I decided to dive in and launch Lunasol Events, and that's what I've been nourishing and putting all my fruits of labor in ever since.
Awesome. I'm just curious because you mentioned that you have done weddings here and weddings in Charleston. Um, in terms of like your experience as a business owner and wedding planner and those two, what do you think are the main differences in the two locations? Like what sets them apart for you?
Yeah, I think it's a two-part. As far as the weddings themselves, I always joke that, in the South, I think that their weddings are planned when they're in the womb. There's the plans, and it's just it it's more intricate. There's a lot more details that go into the weddings. Some are, more custom to the Southern traditions, which is fun. So I think as far as on the wedding front, they're just larger, and a lot more detailed as far as the cohesiveness and the flow of the event. The matching all the way down to the napkins. It's very less DIY, I would say. Just a lot more, which then ties into the vendor relationships. Like, just because there's so many moving parts and so many vendors that need to be hired for the events, um, versus, people aren't purchasing things on Amazon as much and like setting them up or having, somebody make their table numbers. They work with a stationery person, and they work with a charcuterie person that specializes in that. So it's a lot more niche. And it's a cohesive team that really comes together to create the event. Versus my experience planning even in other states, Colorado, um, other states like that, but specifically Minnesota, it just tends to be a lot more like, hey, how can we do this ourselves? How can we save cost savings? Who do we know in our network that isn't necessarily in the wedding profession or industry to create the wedding? I think there's a lot more like Facebook Marketplace usage, and just yeah, I guess I would say like DIY, just bringing it together more, a little bit more piecemeally than a full vendor team.
Right. Yeah, that's similar to what I experienced planning in LA too. It's just
Yeah.
like you didn't start planning until you hired your wedding planner. And in the Midwest, it's just a little bit different. It's like the last thing on the list. It's
Yeah.
oh, we ran out of time. I can't do this. I'm having a panic attack. I need a wedding planner now. Stat.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So
Copy. Yes.
um so uh what was your first okay, let me take you back. What was one of the first weddings that you did, and what was it like? Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah. One of the first weddings that I did, well, the very first wedding that I did was my cousin's, and that was 18 years ago. And that was just, I had so much fun with it because, again, I love the logistics part of it. And, but it was like equal parts exciting and terrifying because at the time I wasn't a wedding planner, but I like had this vision and like made this promise to my cousin that I was gonna like help her create this wedding. And so the stakes seemed really high because, she was the first in our family to have a wedding. And so I just learned very quickly that no amount of planning replaces the real wedding day experience. So no matter how much you Google, no matter how many blogs, and like back then blogging wasn't like, a thing, but I Dr. Googled my way through that that wedding. Like, how do you, way before chat. So yeah, I remember just beaming, but also feeling very, kind of terrified. So I like thought about it of like, if I feel this way and it's not my wedding, I can't imagine how she's feeling, and not having the resources back then that we definitely have now. Um, but it taught me also that flexibility is just as important as organization. There was just things that happened that I didn't think about, like I hadn't thought about, from a lack of experience and things that I didn't even realize that could happen at a wedding. I was like, oh, okay. I very specifically remember a groomsman. He had one too many. He had a good time, and he was tackling and wrestling, and he fell through the window, and it just shattered. And so it was just like, ugh. And I was posing as, a bridesmaid, but also kind of that wedding guru. And, that the day of, at the time, I didn't know there was a title to it. I was just like helping. It was just wild. I was like, oh, and it was one of those things where, again, nobody knew really what to do because there wasn't officially a wedding planner. I just was kind of stepping in. So, that was just kind of a wild experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think we, as planners, we all have those moments that literally, just like what you said, nothing prepares you for. Like, I've had a mother of the bride faint just as she was about to walk down the aisle. I've had a toilet clog on a Malibu cliff, and I had to stick a bag, I put a bag over my hand, but because it's on a septic, you
Yeah,
have to pull out whatever's in there.
yeah,
Like you just have to be ready, and nothing prepares you for any of that until you are actually doing a wedding.
yeah.
Oh, awesome point there. Very good point. Um, okay, so what is something that now that you have been in the industry for many years and you've done so many events, what's something that you wish you knew when you very first started? And I'm sure you probably have a list, but what are like the top three things that you are like, I would have done that differently when I first started.
Yeah. This is pretty fresh for me only because, just having conversations about wedding planning and people, people ask me, uh, I've been asked this similar question recently. And so first and foremost, experience is everything. And that just ties to kind of what we were talking about. Like, you can educate yourself as much as possible and think because you planned one wedding or two weddings that it's just like, I am a wedding planner and I, am ready to go. But the experience is definitely something that I hold with pride, that I've planned hundreds of weddings that have had so many different experiences, good, bad, in between. And that is really, at the time, when I became a wedding planner, it I wish I would have known that and been more soft with myself as far as the perfection, like, the presence over perfection, as I say it. It's just like the learning that I know that I would gain over time just by having those experiences. So I wish I would have been a little bit more soft on myself and not had as much I guess like high bar expectation, like, baby steps. So I think that is key there. One thing I wish I knew is like you can't learn weddings from Pinterest and Instagram. As much as, there's resources, there's other planners, seasoned planners that are ahead of you. Of course, you can learn and educate yourself, but that doesn't mean that you can just be like, I watched these 5 videos or these 15 videos. I've been following these 5 planners, and now I'm a planner and I can do this full throttle. So I wish I knew that too, of like where I could learn the experience and the importance of the different steps and phases when planning a wedding.
Hmm.
Um, One of the other key things that I really, really wish I should have put this as number one, boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are healthy, and that is really for it's a two-part. It's boundaries are healthy when it comes to client interaction, client facing, and also vendors, and just in the industry in general. I had the bug, as I call it, where it's just like I was the yes bug. It's just like yes, 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 and um, I think there's a time and a place for that. I think it's really not like a regret. I just wish I knew it sooner of like that I can have even just a tiny bit of boundary for myself to prevent burnout and just feeling so fatigued and creatively depleted. Um, and if I would have set better boundaries of my offerings, what I'm willing to give, what I realistically can offer, especially for the pricing in which I was charging either at the time or, at that time. Um, yeah, I feel like maybe my experience could have been differently. It's more just of, you know, I wish I learned boundaries earlier in life.
Yeah. Those
Um,
are good points too, because
yeah.
like what you said before, you like there's so many wedding certification programs out there. I know I took one 21 years ago
Hmm.
through an association, and you can take as many tests as you want. It's not go like we said earlier, it is not going to replace. It might give you like some super basic scratch the surface knowledge, but it doesn't put you in that spot.
Yeah.
And then to your point too, what you said about the um when you have boundaries, we see so many up in like people coming looking to break into the industry. Similar situation to both you and I, how we found that love like kind of purely on accident. It wasn't something that we planned as a career.
Mhm.
But so, I mean, other people, it's not wrong for having that drive to want to be creative and plan weddings or be involved in your friends' weddings and find out this is something I think I really want to do. But I think what we're seeing now more than ever is the fact that people are willing to do so much for absolutely nothing less than minimum wage.
Yes. Yeah. And that is like, I would say that would be bullet point 4 for me is undercharging. Undercharging and understanding this, how seasoned I am and by experience, and that naturally I'm going to be able to provide a different experience, probably a lot faster and in a way, and present it, in a way, especially on the client side, because there are so many up and coming or, aspire, that want to break into the industry, specifically with wedding planning. And they do, to your point, it's just like give, give, give. And so to this day, I get consultations that are, well, I talked to X, Y, and Z, and she or he is willing to do this laundry list of things for this price. So what can you do for me?
Mhm.
And so it's frustrating, but that's where the boundary comes up. And that's where, I have gained the confidence within myself to say, that's great. And here is what I can offer you. If this works for you, great. And I can, take yes like no and no like yes. So I think it's just a little bit of a challenge because of that there are people that are willing to give their, I kind of joke their left arm and you know, their bedroom, the guest bed, like come and move in with me. I'll help you plan your wedding for the year. So,
Yeah. Well, and it begs the question too, as you get older in this industry and as you age, because a lot of us start in the industry very young. We're
mhm.
single. We don't have a family or a husband usually when we start out in the industry, or you might have a husband, but a lot of the people entering into the industry do not have families yet.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about too, like your bottom line. If you are a somebody who's looking to have a family, have any sort of semblance of a normal family life, um,
Hmm.
you do have to have boundaries from the beginning and a actual re something a pricing structure that is reality and not,
Yes.
you know,
Reality and reflective
on
of
the
that
dollar.
experience. Yes.
And so, like, something that I know I have faced throughout my career as a mother is I had to make a choice to let clients book, let potential clients book another planner based off of price because I knew I had to pay for childcare. And if I can't pay for childcare from what I'm making from that client, it makes it not worth it.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to that societal question. Everyone talks about everyone deserves a living wage. So is it everyone except for wedding planners?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because it's looked at as an industry that is, make believe or play, especially in the Midwest. I think a lot of people look at it like that and don't really see all the that goes into it behind the
Hmm.
scenes. They think that we're just, making crafts and DIY for our clients.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
Ah, what's happening?
That might be how they're planning their own wedding, but
Yeah.
a professional is not doing that. And so I think it's good that one of the main reasons I wanted to have this conversation too is to talk about the fact of, we talk about, people, things being fair and living wage and all that stuff. Um, but then when people are entering into the industry, all of a sudden all that goes out the window because they have a dream and they want to make it happen. And it's
Absolutely.
like, no, like have some self-respect for yourself, the industry, and then really assess and look at what the road ahead looks like when you say, I'm just charging $200 to do a wedding or, less than 2000 for a full year of planning.
Yeah.
What is that going to look like for you when you try to um, raise a family? Can you afford childcare off of that? Because I certainly can't. Or can you afford to put gas in your car after that?
Exactly. And it's really just like the reflection of your zone of genius. Like for us at Luna Soul, we do planning. That's what we do really well. We will help with some design elements. And there's other designers out there that's what they're niche in that. So I'm very well aware from the lens that I'm looking out of and our ability, to explain to them like this is what we offer, this is the price. And in the bigger vision and the larger vision, this is the other key players that I would like to bring in for their zone of genius because they have that experience. That is what they do. And instead of piecemealing it and saying, like, yeah, we can figure it out. Like, we'll just look at your Pinterest and, like, I don't have inventory. So I'm not going to sell you and take that away from other designers that are that's what they specialize in. Like that is very important to me of, staying in my zone of genius and that I'm offering in the realistic ways that I can serve my clients very well.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Have you been so busy building your business that you've forgotten to make time for yourself? Or maybe you've been saying you and your spouse should find something active to do together, but life keeps getting in the way. At Johnny Rock Bikes, we believe wellness doesn't have to happen in a gym. Sometimes it's as simple as getting outside and taking a ride and reconnecting with your health, your family, or each other. Whether you're looking for your first bike, upgrading your current ride, or getting an old favorite back on the road, the team at Johnny Rock Bikes is here to help because taking care of yourself isn't a luxury. It's an investment in the life you're building. Visit Johnny Rock Bikes in Bloomington, Minnesota or Hopkins and discover how the right bike can change more than your ride. It can change your lifestyle. Hmm. Um, so speaking of like zone of genius, when you which I love that tagline. I love that you use that. That's perfect. Because that's a great way to explain like everybody has their own niches. I think what we're seeing in the industry, and like we've talked about before, is all of a sudden you're seeing a DJ that's doing wedding coordination, or you're seeing like these other vendors who initially enter into the industry with one specific genre
Hmm.
or level of expertise in an area. And then all of a sudden they're throwing all these things that they do into the pot um, to be able to cater to the masses or get any type of business that they can, because we are in the Midwest and this market is, I would say, is a tougher market than probably anywhere else in the country for the reason that we all grow up here and it's like, if you can't figure this out yourself, you're almost told that you are like bad or
Yeah.
that you like if you are not a saver or if you're not scrimping every single penny, even though you're tired and you're exhausted, it's built into our DNA, I feel like in the Midwest that we have to be a certain type of person when it comes to planning these life events.
Yeah.
And so when you see all these vendors that are doing everything they can to capture business, um, what what I think made you decide that you were not going to do that?
I think it just comes to that phrase of the zone of genius. Like I have the level of respect, I guess, for um everyone's hard work and their ability to be good at their craft. And I think that there's something to be said about that. And um, I think it just comes from like the human element, even taking out weddings, the title of weddings. I think it just comes down to the human element of, we all are trying to survive, right? We all are trying to make a living. We all are trying to coexist in this pool of, sometimes what is looked at this, as sameness. And so it I think that the beautiful part about it is that like if we were to dive more into where each of us shine and thrive in our craft, it ultimately is coming together. It's a collaboration. And that is one thing that has been really challenging. Now, Minnesota's home for me. But I was in South Carolina, and I say that because that's where I did a huge bulk of my planning. Um, and so it's just drastically different. And so I learned that being in the South, that, again, I think I kind of touched on this at the beginning, is it was a team. You had a team for everything. Like it wasn't a DJ and a photo booth together in a package. It was a DJ and it was a photo booth company. It was everybody was separate and had theirs, I call it a zone of genius or their craft, however you want to, say it. And that is how I really learned. And I think there's something so beautiful about that
Mhm.
because everybody came together so well. We weren't trying to do each other's job. Like everybody was so clear on what we were doing. And to be honest with you, the level of respect that came from as a planner, not as a boss, but like knowing I would say worth, like knowing like the vendors respected the planner. Like we were the hub and they knew that like they trickled down from that and that at the end of the day, we were the vision and we were the executors of the event. Um, and so it's been very different here. I've tried to bring that that paradigm into my hometown, my home state, and it's been challenging. It's been really challenging to educate couples and like convince them, I guess, otherwise. And also just vendors. I've ran into a lot of to your point of like different vendors adding like hair and makeup people adding on coordination. And
Mhm.
it's like, what what is happening? Like I I can do hair, I can curl hair, but like I'm not a makeup or a hair artist. That is not my niche. That is not my craft. Could I do it in a pinch? Sure. Especially as a planner or a coordinator, you kind of have to be prepared to be a seamstress, a therapist, you know, step
Yeah.
in where you're
All of
needed.
that.
Yeah, but maybe sometimes a DJ, it's just that is natural, but at the end of the day, that is I stay in my zone of genius and um I think it makes it challenging. It does pose challenges for me of maybe opportunity. But I feel really strongly about that the vendor collaboration in that element of like we all have the puzzle piece. When you are putting together a puzzle, we all have the pieces, right? Like what if it was just like this one kind of connect to that one, then you had to it's just like it makes it cumbersome and it like doesn't come together well on the gel.
Mhm.
Whereas when we have our craft and it's like we are going to work with a stationary artist. You want a coffee cart, we will have a coffee cart. We're not going to brew coffee in the back and like makeshift it. We're going to like get somebody who's really amazing and has this beautiful cart and is going to like give your guests an experience. And I think that's not as common in my experience here in Minnesota in the Midwest. It's
Mhm.
not so much about the guest experience. From the time a guest pulls up to the wedding all the way through the flow, that is just not the focus and the experience that I have gotten. I've been home now for 4 years. Like I said, Luna Soul, 3 years here in Minnesota. And it's just been a challenge, but I feel very strongly about keeping my way, as I call it. Um, and I think it's a we over me. Like
Mhm.
it's not me being able to do all of the things and do them not well
Mhm.
and say, yeah, I can like have somebody come and, babysit your dog. No, why would I not reach out to, somebody who specializes in that here in the Twin Cities that has a dog babysitting company who has put the time, the heart, the effort, and the experience and has the overhead of their business why would I
Mm.
not encourage that to have a specialist come in for their wedding? So I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to put it. Thank you for saying all of that because it's so important. And now let's take another break from our sponsors. At Adore, we believe every celebration deserves style, intention, and a personal touch. From event design and products to inspiration through our magazine and blog, Adore is here to support you every step of the way. Learn more and follow along for ideas, tips, and beautiful moments at adore-productions.com or adoremagonline.com. No, but you are totally hitting the nail on the head when it comes to um people wanting you mentioned something about just now about how it's a we over me for you,
Mm,
but your experience here in the Midwest has felt very not like that when it comes to wedding planning. And I found that so interesting because um you were saying even the clients are not necessarily always thinking of the guest experience, whereas you and I started our careers in different parts of the country where it's all about the guest experience.
mm,
Like it's all about like this is what my guests are going to see when they pull up and this is how they're going to feel and this is the scent they're going to smell and I work just like you really hard to tell that story, walk my clients through that when they are when we're really talking because so many, and how often have you heard this?
mm.
So many clients, when you first consult with them, they say, "Oh, we're just doing it very simply," or "We just want something simple." That is
Simple.
probably the most common phrase when it comes to people that are exploring looking at hiring a wedding planner in the Midwest. We just want something simple.
Simple.
And often, the first thing that goes into my head, and I'm sure yours, is um, well, simple looks simple because there's a lot of work involved to make it look simple.
Absolutely.
And so,
Yes.
um, so when people say that to you, I mean, obviously, yes, you agree, you do get that. Like, would you
Mhm.
say that's the most common phrase that people say in a consultation is we just want something simple?
Yeah, we just want something simple. To be honest with you, this is client speaking. To be honest with you, there's not going to be a lot. There's not going to be a lot of setup, or there's not going to be a lot for you or your team to do. And then it ties into that we just are really looking for the simplicity and just like very, very simple. And yeah, it's similarly, it's just, I'm like, great. And the word simple um, is so much larger and has all these like
Yeah.
antennas
And
coming
then
off of
they show
it.
you their Pinterest board and there's like flower walls and ground ground
Yes,
birches and flowers lining the aisle. And you're like,
totally.
but they're white, so it's
Yes. So it's simple. Correct. So it's just white and greenery, so it's simple. Absolutely. Almost every time it's like, okay, well, send me your inspo or your Pinterest or let's talk about what you're thinking, and it doesn't match. So
right, right. And so I think too, helping people understand simple looks simple or feels simple on the wedding day because your wedding planner makes sure that it goes the right way.
correct. Yeah. Yep.
Um, do you love to plan events and weddings and special milestone moments in your life? Because Adore has an amazing opportunity for you. We actually have something called the Society of Celebration, and it helps people that love to be the hostess with the mostest create the most beautiful celebrations without having to have a giant storage closet for all of your decor and events. You can actually have boxes of pre prepared design items sent to your doorstep so that you can have the most wonderful celebration, pack everything up, and ship it right back. Join the Society of Celebration today to gain tips on how to make your celebration just the most beautiful event easily and efficiently, and also have the tools to do it. So check out Adore's Society of Celebration today. So, what do you feel like has changed in the last 5 to 10 years in the industry? What do you feel like has changed the most?
Um, well, I think first and foremost, social media has dramatically changed the expectations. It's like fast, it's like fast fashion. Everybody, wants it fast. They want to be able to like get the information. I think for wedding planning specifically, there's wedding planning and then there's the design elements, and they all come together cohesively and totally. But especially for wedding planners, it's very difficult to articulate and educate on social media per se, your work, because so much of that is yeah, social media I think has dramatically changed the expectations of clients. And I think weddings have become much more personalized. And when I say personalized, I don't really see a lot of the personalization in like creative ways per se. I think it's just people get kind of a convoluted idea to the point of like simple, we added a photo on the bar that from when we were, went to summer camp together. Personal. You know, we we put the lace on the table numbers. Personal. So I think the idea of the personalization and how people are wanting to like make it unique has really changed. It's less about the cohesiveness a lot of times and more kind of the piecemealing, kind of just, I love these 5 colors, so let's do them all, type of thing. Um, and so I think couples also, I think because there's so many resources, there's so many planning tools out there that are being sold that, in a way that's like, we use this, you can plan your whole wedding. Um, and yes, I think that they can, but there's that element of overwhelm. Just because they can physically or logistically do it, there's still this element of overwhelm. And then they're not getting to us planners or coordinators until later on, to the point where their pants are on fire or they're fatigued. They have, decision fatigue. They're just like hitting a wall because the excitement of it kind of dies down a little bit. And then it starts to get into those phases of the logistics. And so then, they've ran out of resources to help with that emotional element of planning. And I think that is a huge key thing. That's something that is very, very present in the way I plan and approach planning, Lunasol in general, where like that is how I sell us. Like we care so much about the emotional element, um, because there's the high highs, the low lows, there's opinions, um, you know, and I think as amazing as Pinterest, that is a tool, and wedding blogs and, publishing, I think that there's an element of that's overwhelming. The word I come up with is overwhelming. And I say that because that's what I usually hear by the time somebody gets to me if they aren't at the beginning stages and like, I need a wedding planner, right? But like they come and they're all of a sudden like, I don't know what to do. I have these said vendors. I've, done it. I've got my dress. Now what? Um, and they usually come and like to your point, like you said earlier, is like their Pinterest is a mile long. They feel so overwhelmed. They don't know how to like bring it all together. They have pictures that they like little pieces of things. And so I think that's changed. The ability to see all the visuals, I think, is lost more and more of the inspiration, and it feels like an expectation, or it puts a lot of pressure on people to do things that they think they have to do for a wedding. And also, I think it creates false expectations or reality for a lot of couples because, having this beautiful candle table that has all these beautiful tapers, but we don't want the glass hurricanes because we want to highlight the color. That's not reality for most venues, right?
Mhm.
Like we have to have the flame covered. So, I think that for couples, I think the biggest thing that has changed is the education and the information that is so readily available to them. And then they think that they can take that and run with it and do it and have fun with it and create this amazing planning experience.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's a success, and most of the time they end up calling somebody like us. And they're like putting it in front and they're like, huh, take it, take the weight. Like it's the invisible backpack, right? It's like that theory. It's like, I've been holding all this weight. I like need help unpacking the rocks because I put them all in there. I read all these blogs. All my friends got married and I took all this information and now I don't know how to like discern what is important, what's not. They lose the vision of like the larger vision because they're just looking at stuff in front of them. Whereas when you have a planner, we're looking at the vision as a whole before it even happens, and dissecting it bit by bit and phase by phase.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Live Life Being Adored. This was just part one of my interview with Brianna from Luna Soul. So make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast, and you stay tuned for the next installment of this interview. There is some really good stuff in here for both wedding planners, event planners, and vendors as well as couples. So stay tuned and make sure you subscribe to Live Life Being Adored. Until next time, see you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Live Life Being Adored. Make sure you like and subscribe our podcast or our YouTube channel and check out Adore Magazine at adoremegonline.com and Adore Productions, adore-productions.com. Have a great day and live life being adored until next time.